everyone, Alexa Donne here, and I have been feeling very sad for a variety of reasons, so what better time to talk about some unexpected things in publishing, more off the beaten path type of things that end up making you sad or can end up making you sad. I wanted to stray away from the obvious ones. Rejection makes you sad, not selling a book makes you sad, your editor leaving makes you sad. But over the course of the last like 3-4 years, I've had things just like hit me like a Mack truck, in some cases out of nowhere. Essentially a good half of the things on this list have made me cry. One or two of them I just did, like, something happened and my eyes started watering. I was like, the feeling smack to the face. A lot of these though are fairly universal. You talk to other authors, it's once you get past a certain point that a lot of these things will come up. Weird things that can trigger depressive episodes, general sadness, and often they're not spoken about because they're gonna sound like some of them are indeed champagne problems, but you might be surprised at some of the things that just are gonna get you down. Also, not an exhaustive list. I'm sure inevitably I will encounter more things that are going to make me sad, but also there are other authors out there who will have other things. So I drop those down in the comments as always, but let's jump into it. So the first possibly surprising thing is pretty common, and it's the like post-release book slump, sadness slump. It's usually 1 to 2 weeks after your debut. For some people it could be a little bit longer, but it's pretty common. You basically come off of the adrenaline rush of your book coming out. So this is really for any book release, but especially your debut, because I think the debut takes you up so high that you have so much further to fall, and it's just the excitement wears off, things go back to normal, or maybe for some people they don't go back to normal, but for a lot of us it's just, oh, your book came out. It's kind of like having a birthday where you don't feel any different, and other than celebrating in the moment, no one treats you any differently. I mean, not that they should, but that's the point. You just get this huge letdown. And coupled with this, so often when you aren't a breakout, so this is for like when you don't like blow up and become a huge success with your book coming out, it's just that you kind of feel invisible, you feel like people are forgetting about you, and so it's just a lot of compounded feelings, and they most commonly hit 1 to 2 weeks after your book comes out. And so you just feel inexplicably sad. This does happen to bestsellers too though. Like I've talked to enough authors, like at first like you gaslight yourself where you're like, this isn't normal, I'm really ungrateful, I've had this amazing thing happen to me, why do I feel so sad like 2 weeks after my book came out? But then you talk to other authors and it's pretty common. The next thing that will trigger sadness is the inevitable thorny thing of blurbs. This can be no one wanting to blurb you, like you send out requests and just nothing really comes back. It can be a particular person declining to blurb you, like you got your hopes up on something. It can also go in the opposite direction, where you as an author aren't being approached for blurbs, and especially in publishing with the comparison game, it'll happen where, oh, your friend is getting a dozen requests for books that are really interesting that you would love to be asked to blurb, but no one's asking you. So like just sad feelings that get very wrapped up in blurbs, and it can feel especially like weird, and you can feel gaslit in a way because people will say, well, blurbs don't even matter, why are you upset about this? But it's something about how we tie a sense of our value to how valuable we are either to blurb or to be a blurber, and it can just make you sad. Which is the next one as well. And if you've watched this channel long enough, you know which of these have happened to me, because some of these I have brought up before. So the next thing, the third thing that can just make you sad in publishing is either it's essentially your trade reviews. So it can be feeling ignored by trades, which does happen. It can be just kind of chasing a starred review over many books or many years and always feeling like you just can't quite get to that level. Though when I make outlines. I actually made this outline a very long time ago, but didn't feel sad enough to film it till right now. I was thinking of the being ignored by trades because I have been there, and it just made me very, very sad, which also contributed to feeling sad after my debut came out. Like all the sad things just kind of roll together, but equally, this is one of the more obvious ones, but getting a bad review from your trades as well. But I was mostly thinking of feeling ignored, which ties into the next one, and it's just the heavy cloak of sadness and disappointment that will roll over you when you see a list, like a buzz list. It could even just be a blogger who made a list and you're not on it, whether that's upcoming debuts, whether that's upcoming books of a very specific type, whether it's the best X type books of the year, and you know that your book fits into that category. So it could be sci-fi and fantasy, it could be retellings, it could be thrillers, it could be rom-coms, like whatever you write, and all your peers are on the list and you are not on it, and you just get this sinking feeling in your stomach. So many of these unexpected sad things are connected to feeling unseen, feeling unimportant, and this is going to trigger imposter syndrome. So these are just things that come up more than you would think. And so the fifth thing that will inevitably make you sad, it's when an author, someone that you really look up to, that you idolize, maybe it's the reason you got into writing, doesn't know that you exist or pointedly ignores you, though I think there's always the question of they might just not know who you are, which makes you sad. And that's, is that better than knowing that they purposely chose to ignore you? It all makes you sad. But essentially it's that feeling where they talk about books that they're excited about, or they're socializing with people that you know but they don't know that you exist, and it's just kind of that sadness and imposter syndrome that comes up of like, I don't even rate with this person who is so important to me. They don't see me as anything other than a fan, and they don't see me on a peer level, and you just feel sad. Cause I think we get these expectations of like, I sold a book, I have a book coming out, I have multiple books coming out, I'm an author, and you're an author, you're here. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get all of the Cinderella validation that we dream of, and you just get sad. How many times do I say sad in this video? You can turn it into a drinking game if you really want to. And I'll tell you, that one has made me cry, and that was one of the ones that smacked me up the side of I just wasn't expecting it. I saw a tweet and I started bawling, and I was like, wow, you care more than you've realized you cared. So this is me validating you. If you randomly start crying because something happens to you in publishing and just triggers all of your feelings, you are not alone, and it can truly sneak up on you. Just that feeling of like, feeling let down by something that you didn't even realize that you had built up as something that was important to you. So the sixth thing that can make you sad is another one that has literally made me cry, and again, caught me by surprise, and that is when you go into a bookstore where you have a reasonable expectation, or at least a hope, that your book is going to be there. And I'll say this is usually with debut, at least for me it certainly was, and they don't have your book, and you just feel, again, it's the sinking feeling of, I don't rate, I guess I'm a nobody, they don't care enough to have me stocked here. I'll tell you, it's happened to me twice. So it actually isn't just debut, because it happened to me on different books. One for me was at a fan convention, and essentially the booksellers didn't find me important enough to stock my book at the book event. That sucked a lot. I will tell you, when your publisher officially sends you to events, that's not gonna happen to you, but sometimes you will go to something and you're like, oh, yeah, and then you just start crying. And another time I went into a bookstore where I really genuinely hoped that I would be on the shelves. It was the week the book came out, and it wasn't, and I just started bawling. Not in the store, I waited till I was on the street. Is that less embarrassing? I don't know. Not like bawling, not a full-on ugly cry, but you're gonna have those feelings hit you, and I know I'm not the only author to have this. It's going into your local bookstore the week of your release, and you're not there, and it just brings up so many feelings. The seventh thing that can make you sad is either not getting invited at all to a book event or not being invited back to a book event. Both things can happen. Like, you can be shiny during your debut year, for example, but then you're not as shiny the next year. Maybe you don't have a book coming out, or your next book doesn't have the buzz. And I have to say, in fairness, in a lot of cases, book events do try to vary their schedule, so they're not bringing back the same person every year, and yet you and I all know that that is not the case for bestsellers. Like, there's certain like anointed authors who can repeat as much as possible, but it's always gonna be a punch in the gut when you know that you were pitched for an event and you were rejected, where you know that you did an event once and they didn't ask you to come back. It just it gets into FOMO. It feeds into that feeling again of like, oh, I guess I'm not interesting enough for this event. And this happens to all of us, and you just get really sad. Drink. And finally, certainly last but not least, I actually saved this one on purpose, the eighth thing that might surprise you that can just make you really, really sad. I have called it in the past second book depression syndrome, but I honestly think this can apply to more than just your second book, but I do know that it commonly does happen with one's second book. It's happened to me and it's happened to others, and that's just kind of this creeping sense of, I'll use the word sadness again, but it's like ennui. We'll be French about it. Of your second book is coming up and your second book comes out, or whatever book it is, and you just feel very lethargic and neutral. It's almost like you're disappointed ahead of time. You can't muster up the enthusiasm to be excited about the book coming out at all. And it's like you get into like a book release depression. And I wonder about it. I think partly it's that comparatively very few people have as good an experience with their second book release as they do with their debut, largely because of debut culture, largely because in a lot of cases publishers don't pay as much attention to second books or subsequent books if it's not just the second book. I think a lot of things feed into it. And then also personally, as I have discussed before, I was grieving my mom dying when my second book was coming out, so I had a lot of personal reasons to be sad, but I legit was just like sad about my book coming out for the months leading up to it, the week that it happened, and just as I was recovering and like, yeah, maybe I can feel some enthusiasm for this and promote it, COVID happened. But I know I'm not the only author who has experienced this phenomenon with a second book or a subsequent book. It's almost like you're pre-dreading things not going the way you want them to. I don't know. It's just, if you do find yourself being inexplicably sad or apathetic about your book coming out, you are not alone. And I think it does surprise people. That's why I wanted to make this video, because I think that I mentioned champagne problems, and I think it's the idea that you've made it. You have arrived. You are living the dream. You're a published author. You're getting to do what so many people dream of. But there are a lot of complicated emotions that come with it. And sometimes, inexplicably, things just bring you low. And then you feel guilty and bad that you feel that way. And it's a cycle. But so those are some of the things that might surprise you that can make you sad in the course of your publishing journey and being published. And I'm here to tell you, feel your feelings. If you just start crying, burst out crying at a weird thing, welcome to the family. It is always the strangest situation and emotion. And I actually just thought of a bonus one, so we'll actually cut off on this one, and that is when you do not see your book in any book hauls or wrap-ups / on YouTube or Bookstagram or Book Talk, wherever you're following, and you just, again, it's that swoop of sadness. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I want to know, like, if you're an author and you've gone through publishing your book, what are some of the things that really surprised you, that made you sad? You know, it doesn't stop you from feeling sad, but I had been warned about the debut letdown, and it was almost easier going into that sadness knowing that it was normal to feel sad. So that's why I want to talk openly about this stuff. So you know that if you walk into a bookstore and your book isn't there and you start crying, that I have been there with you. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. I will make more discussion style videos about like weird truths about publishing, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos theoretically 2 to 3 times a week, but I'm sad, so a little less often nowadays. Thank you so much for watching, and happy writing. And yes, I did color coordinate wearing blue for the video about being sad.